Hello, and welcome to the next installment of Oddly Medical. I'm Sarah,
I'm Chrissy.
and this is going to be the second part of our Doomsday Cult podcast series.
Yay! I'd also like to point out that this is our 10th episode.
Woot,
It's a milestone.
woot.
For 10 weeks, we've seen each other once a week. How you doing?
How you doing?
Yeah.
With the tissue hanging out your nose.
Listen, we were just discussing, I'm on week 3 of there being something wrong with me during recording, and yeah, now it's a cold, but here we go. We're going to do it anyway. It's
gonna be great.
Hey, we're a medical podcast. I mean, it's kind of tracks for one of us to be sick. And
So, what are you, our test monkey?
yeah, it's cold season. It's not my fault.
I work in the medical profession. I haven't been sick yet.
You have a better immune system.
I don't have any immune system.
You're luckier. I was licking doorknobs. I don't know what to say at this point.
Yeah. All right, so I know that last time we talked, I threatened, I guess, that I would not kind of go over the Doomsday Cult
vernacular beforehand.
Similarities between them, but we'll just give a quick brief synopsis. So, things to remember about Doomsday Cults. They pretty much work on the basis of the world's going to end. There's going to be some kind of apocalypse. They have a very charismatic leader. Always. Tends to be some sort of messianic figure. They heavily use propaganda. They separate their followers. We went over the concept of cognitive dissonance, where a normal human, when their stuff is disproven, basically it clashes in their head and they kind of change their beliefs. Cult members, unfortunately, when this happens, instead of changing their beliefs, it reinforces their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So
crazy become crazier.
Right. They tend to work on the monastic tradition of separation. Heaven's Gate was sort of novel in that they went the celibacy route. This will not be that cult this week. And what else?
There's always a charismatic leader. Like, that is just my number one thing that I know from doing the deep dive research of these two cults. The one thing that was just repeated over and over is how charismatic.
He was so charismatic.
The leader was.
Yes.
It was.
That's always. It's every cult you hear about.
Yeah. And then you got, well, maybe I shouldn't throw that human under the bus. They're not far from us. Joel Osteen.
Can I throw him under the bus and roll over him about 10 times?
Yeah, he didn't get such great lookabouts when the hurricane rolled through, and
you charge people to go to your church.
That's true.
Like,
don't do that.
Tithing is one thing. You charge people an entrance fee to your church. That's not church.
There's an entrance fee to go to that?
Yes.
Church? Really?
Yes. You had to pay $40 at the door.
What?
Hand to God.
Pun intended.
Absolutely. Yes. That is not what was meant by tithing.
No. No, the cult we're going to talk about today didn't necessarily have an entrance fee, but they did have something more than tithing happening.
Well, yeah, but this is a cult. Joel, one could argue. One could argue.
Exactly, because I can guarantee you that they probably describe him as charismatic.
Oh, he's so creepy.
Again, tracks.
Clearly not sponsored. Yeah, so that was the brief kind of, this is what we talked about last time. And then, the fodder for a lawsuit. So.
Oh, there's that. You can't get blood out of a turnip, so.
That's fine.
Bring it on, whatever.
It's fine.
It'll get us more attention.
I'd rather be famous than infamous, and you're talking about infamy. Moving on. All right, so Chrissy's going to talk about the People's Temple, aka Jonestown, and take it away.
All right, so today's cult will be brought to you by Jim Jones and the People's Temple, better known as Jonestown. What's crazy to me about this story that I'm about to get to explain to all y'all is how Jones actually went from this like amazing path of could have done all these amazing things and just somehow turned into this narcissistic murdering bastard.
Well, I think the narcissism was there. If you look at his early life,
That's true.
I kind of think he was always. You have to be thrown off to begin with. Sociopaths are like that.
Yes. Yeah. So James Warren Jones was born May 13th, 1931. Listen, another Taurus, also not claiming him. There is a trend here. I'm not liking that. No.
I haven't seen any Scorpios on this.
Oh, mission accepted.
There are no Scorpio serial killers. I just want to point this out.
Really?
Really?
Oh, I'm going to dig into that.
We don't get caught.
We don't get caught. Speaking of sociopaths.
I'm only mildly sociopathic. Thank you.
Medicated well.
Thank you.
So his parents were not known to show him really like any attention or anything, and he was pretty much left alone for the majority of his childhood. As a child, he would be known to wear his Sunday best to school and could always be seen carrying a Bible. From an early age, he was actually able to quote the Bible very well. However, he did show some unusual signs while he was young. One of his favorite things apparently was he would gather the neighborhood children together and he would find roadkill and he would hold a mock funeral for the roadkill that he had found. Yeah.
What is with serial killers and cult leaders
always,
and roadkill and what is
at least he wasn't murdering the animals to hold these funerals, because as I don't know if you know, but like a lot of serial killers, they start out with animals first.
It's part of the it's not the widely accepted thought process that it once was, but it's part of the trifecta.
Yeah, exactly. So at least he found them already dead.
Yay.
So as he got older, he started to attend a variety of churches, becoming very obsessed with religion, trying to find the one that he liked the best. I also found it interesting while researching that the pastors of these churches gave him almost a father figure as sorts, which is something that he didn't have as a child, so he was maybe compensating in that.
All I get is that scene in Dogma where they're like, get them while they're young. Yeah, like the tobacco companies. Oh, I wish we had their numbers. All I get.
As a teenager, he even tested out being an evangelist in his community, for the local Pentecostal church. He would interrupt also like kids that would be out in the neighborhood partying, playing, drinking, smoking, dancing, whatever. He would actually go up to them, stop them, and insist that they sit and read the Bible with him.
I'm sure he was extremely popular.
I'm sure he was. He also found that he was more drawn to black churches when he was out doing this, because the people in the black churches just seemed so much happier to be there, unlike the white churches where everybody just kind of seemed like they had to be there. You know, if you've ever seen the black churches, especially in the 50s and 60s, like...
Oh, no, even now today. Yeah, black church is very much more joyful and than white church. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah, there's that.
Least joyful service ever.
Towards the late 1940s, Jones had taken a job as an orderly in a hospital where he would do many different jobs that he actually quite enjoyed. And this could be from cleaning up vomit, cleaning up blood, to even moving dead bodies. But he enjoyed this very much, you know, because sociopaths do.
I'm a nurse, but a lot of what I do is those things.
Right.
Thanks anyway.
So he actually did want to become a nurse after this. However, it did change to he wanted to become a minister. Obviously. On March 2nd, 1954, while in his early 20s, Jones had formed Community Unity, its own congregation, which was interracial, being something that was unheard of at that time.
What year was this?
1954.
Okay.
The building that held Community Unity is actually still standing today in Crete, Indiana at 1502 North New Jersey Street. I thought that was interesting that
cool.
It's still there. So Jones believed everyone should be treated equally. Members of the congregation would even hold peaceful protests at different restaurants around the city, preaching for the equality of everyone. If these restaurants actually did participate, they would notice a huge upsurge in visitors because Jones would pass out lists to all of the members in his congregation of quote unquote approved restaurants.
Mhm.
And so the restaurants would tell other restaurant owners, like, hey, if you participate, your numbers will be insane. So,
Right. Well, but they had to be okay with black patrons as well as white patrons.
exactly. But
Yes.
this man was before his time in trying to integrate,
Absolutely.
you know, the blacks into the whites back in the early 50s, because, you know, back then it was still very segregated.
It's Jim Crow, yeah.
Who?
Jim Crow?
No.
Well,
Later. Okay.
So there were Jim Crow is the separate drinking fountains, is the back of the bus, is the all the laws, the segregation laws,
okay.
and the things that the legislation that kept whites and blacks apart and systemically kept blacks impoverished and whatnot. We'll have a lesson on Jim Crow, but yeah, the Jim Crow South.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So, you know, if he could have kept on this path, because he believed that since he was young and from when he was young and his parents didn't have anything to do with him, he wanted to be able to give people who also felt that, he wanted to give them a better life.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Well, he eventually, at some point he took a wrong turn at Albuquerque.
He really did, man. He took a left when he should have taken a right. So by October 1st of 1956, Jones decided to move to a larger building to hold his growing congregation. However, the building they were moving into was previously a Jewish synagogue and had the word temple already carved into the concrete. And this is how we got the name, the People's Temple.
Because, I mean, you know, waste not.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's probably hard to delete, edit concrete, so we'll just carve people right there.
I just did it like this crayon font, like peoples.
Ta-da!
By this really decorative temple.
You know, you would think that he was on this great path, being the civil rights pioneer that he was, giving people hope and love, something that he never had as a child. He was even setting up soup kitchens, financial aid, housing for those in need. There was even a document that I had read for college students. They would build homes for these college students and give them money to go to college. Like, how can a man go from doing these amazing acts to the complete demise of so many people? I know the answer, but it's still...
But there are clues. Like, unfortunately for you, I've read books on Jonestown previously. There are clues that he's manipulating as well. Like,
there's so much.
He's doing it to be worshipped. Like,
yes.
This is not altruism.
It's not, but it still just blows my cold medicine riddled brain right now. I just don't get it.
Yeah, she's not allowed to be on cold medicine where she keeps changing her passwords.
I'm sorry, I did. I tried to be useful yesterday and changed a lot of her passwords and then couldn't remember what I changed them to.
Girl.
I'm sorry.
Like drunk dialed our podcast.
I did. Yes. Anyways, back on track. So, most of this actually can also be to the contribution of the drugs that Jones was taking. With the congregation growing, it meant that Jones had to stay on top of his game. So he started using amphetamines to give him the surges of energy to keep him going through the day, and tranquilizers at night to calm him down so that he could rest.
How very Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
Uppers and downers.
Yay! And we saw how that ended for her. However, this cocktail of uppers and downers started to cause Jones to become super paranoid.
Because you're giving narcotics to a crazy person.
Coming for me. And what was a fear in the U.S. around this time? Nuclear holocaust!
Yay.
Come on down. With this fear, Jones and his immediate family actually bailed to Rio de Janeiro, nailed it, for a couple of years where he taught English at a university. Then on August 6th of 1965, he and his family, plus about 140 of his church members, moved to Ukiah, California, believing they would be safe there. It was actually in one of People magazine's top 10 places to survive the nuclear holocaust of the time.
Wait, so they went to the desert to survive a nuclear holocaust? I have some questions. Isn't that
That's your question in all of this?
I have a couple questions. So, he does know that they're testing all the nuclear devices in the desert, right?
It probably would have worked out better had they tested closer to him.
Oh, God. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So, they only lasted in Ukiah, though, for about 6 years before realizing they were going to need more room for their growing members. So they packed up and moved to San Francisco on May 5th of 1971. And a year later, even opened a second location in Los Angeles. All right, about now is when money was desperately needed, so Jones figured out how to really get the seats packed in the house. Faith healing.
Which we will do an episode on, because I find faith healing fascinating.
This man, I mean, take every stereotypical moment of a faith healer and just channel it, because that's what he was. He was the up and down and praise Jesus the Lord. You are saved from here on now. I mean, it was insane watching some of these videos. These people are all about it. They were there for it.
Well, yeah, he just appropriated every, charismatic black minister he'd ever seen.
I know. I even saw a woman.
Threw some tent revival shit in there.
Yes. They did that. They took their show on the road.
Yeah, they did.
But there was even a woman on there that was talking about how he spoke like a black man. He would use audience plants to pretend that they were randomly called on for an ailment and were miraculously cured.
It's theater, baby.
It's know.
Theater.
I know, but theater, you know you're going to see something fake. These people truly believed him. He would even go as far as to have, his faithful few rummage through people's trash, get their names, find a doctor's note, something, and then call him out during a service to make everyone truly believe that he was this miracle healer, one of God's special little people.
Yeah, he's a snake oil salesman.
Yes. There was one video that, it just plays over. It lives rent-free in my head, and it was a woman with her fingers, and she was a plant. But just his face in the video, I wish I could figure out how to post the video. I gotta figure that out. Because he does this, he looks at her, and he twists his neck really fast, and then he just throws out his hands, and he looks at her like, you're fixed, aren't you? And she is, and the look afterwards on his face is just
yeah. There's a lot of it that's psychosomatic. I mean, adrenaline can do some things, and if you're caught up in the spirit, and your adrenaline is going...
I even read reports that plants in the audience that were quote-unquote nurses would walk up to someone who did not know they had cancer, quote-unquote, and they would reach into their mouth and pull the cancer out. It was chicken livers that was in their hands.
That's a very old trick.
I get that, but the fact that someone stuck raw chicken liver and something, now you got salmonella. So you gonna cure that?
I mean, a little antibiotic here, you'd be fine.
So by July 1973, the People's Temple had 2,570 members from all walks of life from all over the country. 3 months later is when they decided that they were going to establish an agricultural mission and socialist paradise in Guyana as a branch of the main church. For 4 years, members went to this so-called paradise to build it and get it ready for the congregation, because it was just a jungle. There was nothing there.
It's Guyana. Of course it's just a jungle.
So obviously it needed some help. During this 4 years, Jones stayed very busy, being named one of the top 100 clergymen by Religion in America Life and obtaining a jeweler's license, which will come back into play later.
Okay.
It wasn't until the summer of 1977 that Jones whisked his family away overnight to Guyana. The mass exodus was actually due to the growing media attention. Apparently, some past members were starting to speak out about Jones and his narcissistic assholeness that he really was. Somehow, Jones was actually able to get his hands on this article the evening before it was to come out the next morning, and he saw that it did not show him in a good light. So, literally that same night, him and several hundred church members loaded a plane, gone.
So, was it just like, was it going to be litigious? Was it going to be like fraud and or financial? Like, was this going to go to court for something? Is that why he fled, or
No,
just,
it
okay.
was just painting him in a bad light. It was
Well, he's a narcissist. He's not going to be able to handle that.
exactly. No, you cannot shame me. I am God. At one point, he actually threw out the Bible saying that he was God's prophet. So this man believed
He's
that.
a messianic figure. We've
Yep.
talked about that.
Check that box off.
Nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. There were some survivors who did speak out about when they got to Jonestown. One of them was actually very tragic, but that things were completely different than what they believed it was going to be. Like their passports were taken, they had no money because they had to donate it all to the church. They would sell their homes and donate all this money to Jones. And the families were actually even separated. Children were sent one way, adults were sent another. By 1978, there were nearly 1,000 people living in Jonestown, and it was only built for about 300, meaning there wasn't even enough food to go around.
Damn.
Yeah. But the way James Jones was able to keep these people from uprising is how they were treated. From the time they woke up very early in the morning, their days were very structured. They would eat their rice and water for breakfast, then school if they were of that age, and then forced to work out in the fields in the sun while being quote unquote guarded.
Mm-hmm.
Once the workday was done, they would all have to convene under this pavilion. This pavilion is very prominent for Jonestown. There will be lots of pictures of this pavilion on our
It's
website.
very much the central
nucleus,
like hub,
Yeah.
nucleus of the thing, yeah.
yeah. So
If y'all have ever seen any Jim Jones thing of him like later on in life preaching, you've seen the pavilion. You've seen the pavilion.
Like it is its own character. But under this pavilion is where Jones would drone on for hours, sometimes lasting until the early morning, like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, doing his quote unquote preaching. And sadly, it was mostly just him drunk rambling and just
Or
narcissistic rambling or high rambling. And if someone happened to fall asleep, they would be hit
Mhm.
and threatened with their lives.
Mm-hmm. Can't sleep through your Lord and Savior.
So by keeping these people exhausted and secluded, their brains just basically let Jones take over, letting him do all of the thinking for them as they just couldn't compute anymore. And to make it worse, Jones's paranoia was also continuing to grow, and he was failing in health, causing him to take more medications, making him even just more radical.
Mm-hmm.
He would call for white nights, believing that intelligent agencies were coming for him, and he would give his people 4 options. 1, flee to the Soviet Union. 2, run into the jungle. Mind you, Guyana is one of the most dangerous jungles in the world.
Pretty much any jungle, like
That's also fair.
Like I just jungle, dehydration and slithering. Like that's all I got.
Panthers,
Like,
apex predators.
Which I am now at the bottom of the fucking food chain.
Yeah. Next, please. So number 3 was to stay and fight, and he even expected children as young as 11 to fight amongst them.
Didn't they patrol too? Like kids that young did? Because I know they did patrols.
I don't know. Ooh, I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Well, now you got me curious because there's so much that I'm not able to cover that I wish I could, and that's actually a question I don't know.
I mean, if you're arming children, that's a whole separate
Also fair.
thing. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So the 4th was revolutionary suicide, obviously.
Yeah.
Sadly, the last one, his congregation got to rehearse twice, calling each time a test of loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
God, these poor humans.
Are they?
Well,
Are they?
Listen.
You sold your house and you uprooted everybody to follow a dude down into a South American jungle. So here's my question. Yes, that sucks for them. But at the same time, you fucking knew. You did it. You done this.
They did, believing that it was something completely different.
And I get that.
And they had no exit strategy.
But the guy who's faking miracles is obviously somebody you want to put all your trust of your life into.
They believed him. Fair. I'm with you. I'm with you. But this was during a time that people needed something good to hold on to with all the wars and the nuclear fallout and segregation
and I get all that, and cult leaders
also got all that.
Right. Sociopaths are great at studying people and great at looking for those little chinks in the armor. I get all of that. I really do, and I'm not victim blaming at all.
Yeah, no.
But at the same time, again, keep pulling chicken livers out of people's mouths. But obviously everything he says is going to be correct. Have a moment with that.
I think that they were mostly looking forward to the socialist life. I mean, that does sound
right, and
intriguing.
Well, not just the Soviet Union, but Cuba was also an option.
Yes,
for them.
Cuba was also an option
because it's closer.
Fair. There's actually a survivor story that I'll circle back around to towards the end that I found really interesting. So. By early 1978, a group known as the Concerned Relatives finally got the attention of a U.S. Congressman, Leo Ryan. Leo is his first name, Ryan's his last name. I say that because I, for a long time, thought his name was Lee Orion. So, there you go. To open an investigation for the welfare of the Americans that were living in Jonestown. However, it wasn't until November 15th, of 1978 that Ryan, along with a newspaper journalist, some TV journalists, and a few of the Concerned Relatives finally boarded a plane to follow out an investigation of Jonestown. So the night before their arrival, Jim Jones worked really hard on his people. He was coaching them on exactly what to say, testing them, and even banning some of them from speaking altogether. Yeah, like, ooh, you said the wrong thing. Go hide in the jungle. He wanted to present this beautiful utopia so that everyone would just go back happy, leaving them alone.
Just gonna throw on his signature shades and perform for the people.
Absolutely. Okay. Come on down here in Jonestown, where everybody is happy. So the sunglasses that Jones actually wears. If you've seen Jim Jones, especially in the later year, you will see him have on what kind of look like Ray-Bans. Kind of wish I had a set right now. I'd hold my mic up and preach on down.
Oh, Lord.
So he told people that the reason he wore these sunglasses was because the power of God was so... There was so much of it in him that it shone through his eyes.
He's fucking Cyclops from the X-Men?
Yes. And that it could blind or injure someone else. Yes, that's what he told people.
He is Jesus Cyclops from the X-Men.
Jesus Cyclops.
Damn.
Now I have a whole new view. When in reality...
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
You'll never be able to watch X-Men ever again.
Two jokes. Yep. Because he would blind you with his power. But
he blinded me with Jesus.
I wear my sunglasses at night
so I can blind you with Jesus.
Yep.
Sorry.
Actually, it was to hide his eyes. Not because of Jesus shining through them.
It's because you're high.
But because he was high as a kite.
Yes.
And they were red and watery all the time. So he had to hide them. But
yes,
this man wore these glasses all the time. But I love his explanation. And now the fact that all I see is Jesus Cyclops.
Yes.
That's all there is.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. There it is. There it is. So while Congressman Ryan was in Jonestown, he honestly did believe that all the people who were there were beyond happy and just living their best lives. There was dancing, singing, praising, and just a good old party. And best of all, cookies!
What?
They had cookies.
Okay.
Usually on Sundays, the children were allowed one cookie, but they actually got cookies. Oh, there was even another one where...
Wait. Where did they get this? Like, aren't they eating rice and water? Like, where do you get the shit for cookies? Like, sugar's expensive.
They probably didn't have sugar in them. They were probably...
What kind of cookie is that?
Probably janky-ass cookies, if I had to guess.
No sugar. That's not a cookie.
To them, it was a cookie.
That's not a cookie.
To them...
That is not a cookie.
It's a brokey. I don't know. So after being there...
It's a starchy bleh. Like, that's not...
Throw some cinnamon in
A
there.
little bit more.
Some molasses.
I do like me a good molasses cookie.
So after being there for 3 days, Ryan was headed back to U.S. to inform everyone who was concerned that all was well in Jonestown and that they should just be left alone. But during his final exit, a few of the members did speak up and ask if they could come back to the U.S. with him. And of course he said yes, not knowing the madness that would soon unfold. I love that face. Once back at the airstrip, Congressman Ryan, along with the reporters and a new addition of 16 defected members, began to load the 2 airplanes that were there waiting on them. Then out of the jungle came a tractor pulling a trailer with what we now know to be the Red Brigade. This was kind of like Jones's own little military army.
Hit squad.
Hit squad. They opened fire, killing the congressman, 3 reporters, and 1 of the defectors, while wounding many others.
Mm-hmm.
It was reported that Ryan was shot more than 20 times.
Definition of overkill.
Yeah. Kill it. Once word got back to Jonestown, Jim Jones knew that the end was now near. He summoned everyone to this...
Well, you done messed up, Aaron?
Oh, big time. Ooh, you messed up. So he summoned everyone to this pavilion, where he told them that soon U.S. forces would be swooping in to come, take, and torture the children because someone killed the congressman. Not the children.
Someone clutch the pearls, Jim.
Clutch the pearls.
Clutch the pearls.
Mm.
Somebody just killed that man.
So, yeah.
They're going to think it was us, because it was.
So now is the time to enact that revolutionary suicide that they had practiced twice before. So sadly, there are actually tapes of this, as Jones did frequently tape his speeches. These would also be projected out while people were working in the fields, droning that in. So what's creepy about these tapes, though, from Jonestown is they would have to record over them sometimes. And the creepy underlining of, like, previous tapes. And so there would be this, like, disembodied voice in the background.
Yeah, for our younger listeners who have never had to tape over a VHS tape a bunch of times, you would sometimes get you would sometimes get surprises, like random things would pop through and whatnot, because and especially if it's an older tape that's about to break. And yes, our VHS and cassette tapes would break eventually, but you would get pop through of, if it was a cassette tape, other songs. If it was a VHS tape, like other things you had
movie that you taped over.
Recorded.
So this particular tape, however, was known as the death tape. You can hear members who did not wish to die on this tape. It is so harrowing to hear this. Children were even crying in the background, while Jones, in his own heavily intoxicated state, is telling mothers to silence their children and not get them worked up, as this was the divine that was happening. And it's just, again, playing over in my head.
I've heard it. I've watched it.
You've heard them. So
I've watched.
You can go online and you can hear these tapes, and he's just
have fun with that.
Mother, and I could just reach through and just bitch slap this man. So in a large metal tub, there was an already mixed concoction, grape flavor aid, Valium, chloral hydrate, Finnegan, and cyanide. Remember that jeweler's license that we were talking about?
Yeah.
So that little baby is what allowed Jones to have cyanide imported monthly into Jonestown.
Interesting.
Upon his command, people started to drink this. If you were unable to drink it or if you refused, it was injected into you.
80 kids.
300 children and babies.
Yes, but they found puncture marks on 80 of the babies, infants.
Yeah. Yes.
80 infants.
People were literally dropping like flies all around, dying from what I can only imagine to be a completely horrible death. Though Jones, being the cowardly asshat that he was, didn't drink the Kool-Aid and died from what they believe was a self-inflicted gun wound to the head.
That is controversial.
Mm-hmm.
That is controversial. He may have actually had somebody shoot him.
Oh, yeah, that's why I said believe, because it could have been the nurse.
Yes.
That was there's always a nurse follower. Step 1 in starting a cult, get a nurse. I'm halfway there!
Nailed it.
All right. Guys, if we become a cult, we already have Sarah, we're good.
I'm already, just hide my meds. I won't know what's going on. It's fine. It's fine.
So, now I gotta talk about this. So that day, November 18th, 1978, 918 people, which includes the people at the airstrip, senselessly lost their lives. This was the single greatest deliberate loss of American civilian life until the September 11th attacks in 2001. It took days to clean up at Jonestown, and unfortunately, being out in the jungle for even just a couple of days, some of the bodies were unrecognizable while others had even exploded. There are still to this day 404 unidentified bodies that were laid to rest in a mass grave. It's crazy to me how a man who came from so little was able to build this amazing family of church members, not seeing color, not seeing race, just believing that everyone should be treated equally. He was even the first Caucasian to adopt an African American baby in Indiana, who he named Jim Jones Jr., who did luckily survive. He wasn't living in Jonestown at the time. He was in Georgetown working.
So he wasn't part of the one chick that they called and were like, go ahead and.
No, he was not aware of it.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? The chick that it was a cult member who was living in Georgetown, and she killed herself and her 3 kids.
Yes,
and,
she was. She took her kids into the bathroom and slit their throats in the bathtub. Yeah, he was not a part of that. He actually came back to there because that was like their
headquarters.
They're headquarters in Jonestown, and he was one of the ones that.
I mean, in Georgetown.
Georgetown. He was one of the ones that actually happened upon them.
Oh.
Yeah. He was younger at the time. Unfortunately, his pregnant wife was among the dead. He was working in Georgetown. His father had sent him there to work, and he made her go back to be with his mother, and he even hates today that he signed her death warrant.
Is he still living?
He is.
Interesting.
He is still living, yes. But, just letting...
Did he change his name?
No.
Really?
He is still Jim Jones Jr.
Really?
At least in everything that I saw him in. Maybe that was just so that people knew in the articles. Because I saw articles, documentaries, things like that.
That's super interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I did not know any of that.
Yeah.
He's super
He's still out there. And, the family that I was talking about earlier that did survive. So this man packed up his wife, his 3 children, and his mother. Moved them all down to Guyana. He is even one that in some of the tapes you can hear him like, the children do not need to die. We do not need to die.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? He was him and his family were 16, and a part of the 16 defectors. The one defector that died on the plane was actually his wife. He looked over at her, and she was slumped over, and the top of her head was just gone. He grabbed his daughters. His son and his mother were on one plane, and his daughters, one was laid out on the airstrip, and the younger daughter ran up and was like, she's just pretending she has to be, and she was.
Nice.
Yes.
Smart kids.
So the dad grabbed the girls and said, go into the jungle and stay there until we call you. They didn't want to go too far because it's Guyana. It's a jungle. It's dangerous. These girls booked it. They ran so far that they were lost in the jungle for 2 days. The dad, when he tried to call for them, they didn't come out. He was like, that's it, they're gone. One of them even started running fever in the middle. Yeah, in the jungle. Luckily, they were found by Guyana forces like 2 days later, and they were all reunited.
Nice.
So there's even video of the TV news reporter. He recorded until he was shot and killed. It's very tragic. Very tragic. But, just he gave people hope and love, something that he didn't have as a child, and a foundation providing to those less fortunate. And then just letting drugs and paranoia not only destroy himself, but thousands of people that were left in the wake of this just completely unnecessary disaster.
Yeah.
So there's my sadness for today. Sarah will now explain.
I'll now explain how they killed themselves. So, we're going to talk about the different components of what they used to carry out this lovely little mission. I do want to point out that they had a contest to see who could come up with the best idea for how to kill everybody in the
complex. I did not know that.
Yes. And so people submitted yes, people submitted to Jones we think we should do it this way. We think we should do it this way.
Okay, well, whoever submitted this one?
Dr. Shocked.
Oh.
He was the doctor at the compound.
They did have a doctor there.
Yes. So he got a pig and he tested this cocktail on a pig and said, yeah, I think this would be the best one. Wrote it up, gave it to...
Unfortunately, that pig was not Jones.
No. Wrote it up. You can actually... I found it online, his original, typed up, proposal.
So this is what I love about this podcast. This is exactly the purpose. I know about Jonestown, but I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
The medical science behind it. So,
and his whole proposal is here you go, and that's the one that Jones picked. So, yeah. We'll start. Well, we're going to take each one of the elements of this lovely little cocktail that they did. So, the first and foremost is potassium cyanide. So, it is a white, granular, crystalline solid in its regular form. It is released as hydrogen cyanide gas, which is a highly toxic chemical asphyxiant that interferes with your body's ability to use oxygen.
Oh, you need that.
Yeah, a little bit. It affects the organs that are most oxygen sensitive. So your central nervous system, your cardiovascular system, and your pulmonary system, i.e. your lungs.
Yeah, need all that.
Yeah. It smells apparently like bitter almonds, though not everybody can smell it.
I have heard that before.
Yeah. Not everybody can smell it, and even if you can smell it, it gives no indication of the concentration or the amount that's there. But some people not. It's one of those things like cilantro, so cilantro actually is.
I love cilantro.
I do too, but people with more discerning palates, apparently it tastes like soap because they actually have more sensitive taste buds, and cilantro has an alkaline chemical to it, so it's your body going, don't eat that. That's not good.
Oh, not okay.
So maybe these are in the same olfactory areas.
Look at me learning something new.
So potassium cyanide is very water reactive. It is a strong base. As we've talked about before, anything very alkaline or basic, that's your ammonias, your cleaning products, tend to be very basic, are not good when ingested.
No, hence the warning label.
So early poisoning symptoms would include lightheadedness, giddiness, rapid breathing, nausea and vomiting.
But at least you're happy about it.
Feeling of neck constriction and suffocation, confusion, restlessness, and anxiety. Later or more severe signs would include stupor, coma, muscle spasms. So your head and your neck and your spine kind of arch backwards in sort of this rigid arc.
Ugh.
You have convulsions, fixed and dilated pupils, cold, clammy, but often blue skin. And that's another big thing with cyanide poisoning is that they turn blue.
Really?
Yes.
I have heard that it's actually also, yet they have to be looking for cyanide to find it in an autopsy.
So it's interesting that you say that. So one of the ways that you can tell is if you look at somebody's labs or you do like draw blood labs on somebody, you can look at what's called an anion gap. Now, usually what we're looking for in an anion gap is we're looking for diabetic ketoacidosis. So we're looking at the buildup of hydrogen that comes with that kind of acidosis.
Okay.
And how things are not binding. So instead of things binding, like your positive and negatives binding where they're supposed to be, there is literally like, there's too many free ones. So there's there's so much that you're not like, they don't have partners. So they're just kind of wandering around your body like, hey, where are my people at? Tamar, go full Tamar. Where are my people at? But, so usually that's what we use it for. But you can use it to test for cyanide poisoning as well.
Okay.
And the bluish tint, more often than not, is around the lips. But unfortunately, any sort of cyanosis, i.e. lack of oxygen for any length of time, is going to turn your lips blue.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to combine certain things. But yes, there is a test that we run regularly that if you're looking for it, could tell you they have cyanide poisoning, but that's not how we usually use it.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason that the doctor picked this is, as he said in his memo to Jones, this usually kills within seconds to minutes, but it can take up to 3 hours.
Oh.
So convulsing and rigidity and all that.
In the jungle.
In the jungle. So
for 3 hours. I hope it took that doctor 3 hours to
I hope so. But in the concentrations they had, of course it didn't. So that is the first component. The second component is potassium chloride. So potassium, it's a regular, positively charged ion. It maintains intracellular tonicity. So it's required for nerve conduction, cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscle contraction, production of energy, synthesis of nucleic acids, maintenance of blood pressure, normal renal function. Like potassium does a lot.
Yeah.
Potassium is one of your big go-to electrolytes.
Yeah, because I've heard of potassium deficiency, which is a bad thing.
Yeah, well, that's where you get like your hamster hams. That's where everything like cramps up and shit like that. Yeah.
What is it when your calf locks up?
Ow.
I can't think of
Charlie horse?
Charlie horse.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can get that when you have potassium deficiency.
Those are awful.
Because again, it's for your muscles contracting.
Yeah.
So your muscles will contract, but it can't relax because potassium to tell it what to do.
Yeah. Every time my husband gets one, God, he gets so whiny. I just want to chunk a banana at his head.
I mean, that's funny too. So potassium in its regular form appears as white cubic crystals with a strong saline taste. Too much potassium causes a lot of problems. Too much potassium can cause cardiac problems. You may or may not know that this is the component of lethal injection that stops the heart.
Really?
A bolus of potassium chloride is what you do not bolus potassium. In fact, I've had doctors order it accidentally IV push, and I'm like, the only place we do this is Huntsville.
Shit.
So I won't be doing that.
I won't be doing that.
So yes, but yes, so it alters the cardiac conduction, and so your heart does just some wacky stuff. Like we have told doctors we will not put a pacemaker in until you correct their potassium.
Okay.
Because it can cause horrible dysrhythmias that once you get it under control will resolve.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to look at that stuff.
Okay.
So your heart, it no like the bad potassium.
I don't like it.
It don't like it. So it is potassium chloride is a GI irritant, so it can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Can eventually cause a paralytic ileus, just basically. You know how you have the normal peristalsis, that kind of movement that keeps your poop going through your intestines? Yeah. So that will stop and just poop will collect and it's paralytic because literally it's not moving anymore and it's just like this big old
Lump?
yes, paralyzed lump of intestines, which you can perforate and die from that.
Well, I was gonna say something must have caused some leakage somewhere because sadly, a lot of people poop their pants.
Well, that people poop their pants when they die. People like when they take that final
I've
poop,
heard that.
they're dead.
They eliminate people just their bodies eliminate.
Well, everything like your sphincter tone, everything goes away. So yes, when people die, they poop. Other overdose symptoms for potassium chloride include weakness, ascending paralysis. So it'll start like in your feet and your hands and stuff, and kind of go inward.
Oof.
And then tremors, and obviously death.
Obviously.
So you had large quantities of both of those chemicals in this Kool-Aid. But in order to help with the suffering caused by these,
Oh, okay.
they threw in 3 lovely additives. So the first is promethazine, which is also called Phenergan.
Can't take that.
Can't take it either. I hallucinate.
Me too.
We talked about that in an earlier episode. So it's an antiemetic. It's actually an antihistamine. I actually did not know that Phenergan was an antihistamine because I've never used it for that purpose.
It's an antihistamine?
Yes.
I will not be using that.
Me and antihistamines, we don't get along. It encourages sleep and reduces pain and anxiety. So there's that. So it's calming them down and making it so they do not throw up.
Oh, how kind of them.
Yes. So we also have Valium. The other name for it is diazepam. It's a benzodiazepine. Very similar to Versed, very similar to Ativan, very similar to... There's a bunch of them. Anyway, it's a central nervous system depressant. It treats anxieties. It treats muscle spasms. So it's going to help with that arching, crappy way of dying. And it also is used to treat seizures. Also, things that the potassium cyanide is doing. It's counteracting that.
How about we just not do any of it?
How about? And then chloral hydrate. So chloral hydrate's an interesting drug. They used to use it a lot in pediatrics. They don't as much anymore use it. It has some weird side effects. But it's hypnotic. So it will cause you to, like, it's pain relief, it's anxiety relief, but also it's memory loss. Like, hypnotics are used for basically, if you're going to do a procedure on somebody and you want to give them chloral hydrate, you can do the procedure without giving them anesthesia and they won't remember anything. Now, I simulate hypnotic daily.
I wish y'all could see my face.
I simulate a hypnotic daily, like, because I give Versed and fentanyl together, and that simulates a hypnotic. Chlorohydrate's a one-stop shop.
So people that have procedures in your clinic, they don't remember?
They shouldn't if I've done my job correctly.
Really?
Yes. My clinic, my cath lab.
Cath lab. Sorry. Just made you sound creepy for a minute.
I'm like Betty from the block working at the clinic. Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, that's my goal. Whenever you're doing, do you really want to remember like us treating your heart attack? Or like when I worked with kids, we gave them ketamine as their hypnotic.
Isn't that a horse tranquilizer?
It is, but we use it. It's really good in pediatric medicine for moderate sedation. So as we're resetting their broken arm, we're giving them ketamine, which is a hypnotic, so that they will not be in pain and they will not remember it. So it was a combination of 2 pretty badass drugs with a lot of things that help you not throw up, not remember, not feel pain. But it's still a pretty horrible way to die. Like Heaven's Gate, very tranquil. This one, not really.
So I had discussed that there were, in the beginning of last week's, that there were similarities and stark differences. Similarities as we have
It's much more violent.
Yeah. So the similarities, of course, is the vibrant, charismatic leader who segregated everybody off. And then, but what they have in difference, major difference, is Heaven's Gate was all adults. And
Yes.
they were all consenting adults, and they died a very peaceful death.
Well, it was very organized. It was very peaceful. It was very, it wasn't the violence and the fear. I mean,
It was not fear driven.
no, not at
It
all.
was not violent driven.
Quite frankly, it was kind of joyful for them.
It was like that was their euphoric moment for these humans at Jonestown. They were injecting babies with sorry, I'm sorry,
I just
and
want to smash people's heads for that.
exactly
Leave the babies alone. They
leave
didn't do
it.
anything.
And there were people who tried to at least get the children out. Actually, the defector who did make it out, you know, he wanted to go back and fight for these kids to get out of there because he knew what Jones was going to do, and hence why Jones had to kill them all.
Well, because Jones convinced his followers that if the children were taken, they would be put in government facilities and tortured.
Yeah.
That is what he convinced people of.
Yeah.
That's the, and it. So when I was researching the poisons and I came across that, I actually called Chrissy and yelled at her. I was like, now I have this information in my head and I don't want it. As a mother, I'm an adoptive parent, but as a mother, you know, how can you kill your baby? But if you think that this will be quick and what the government's going to be doing to them is going to be slow and painful and torturous in their whole life, that is the only way I can wrap my brain around killing my child.
Gates woman who killed like 6 of her kids in a bathtub because the devil was going to get them.
She had postpartum psychosis, though. That is a whole.
And these people just had psychosis.
These people had gotten so wrapped up in their own in. They were feeling the fantasy for a little too long,
and they felt it a little too hard.
Yeah. So
basically, the moral to the story is if you're going to start a cult, A, get a nurse. And B, follow more along the lines of Heaven's Gate. All consenting adults. Everybody's happy.
Or how about, don't join a cult?
No, start one. I'm starting one. I have a nurse. I'm already halfway there.
Dude, make a quilting club. If you need connections with other people.
So there is what's not a cult that feels like a cult. Hi, I'm a cheer mom.
That's a legitimate statement. That is a legitimate statement.
I need sunglasses. I need the Heaven's Gate away patch, and I need the koozie that I found that has a picture of Jim Jones on it that says "Drink up." I want this in my life. I'm gonna go to my next cheer competition with this.
I just want to see how many people clock you. If anybody clocks you, I'd be stunned.
This would be great.
This is like a social experiment.
Yes. Oh my god.
How many rednecks does it take to spot Jim Jones? The world may never know.
Oh, this is happening. This is happening. Now I have to set this in motion. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We'll let y'all know how that shakes out.
I can't wait.
But that takes us to the end of
episode 10.
Jazz hands.
Yay!
These are spirit fingers. So we're in all the usual places.
Plus an extra one.
Oh, so I have 2 episodes up on YouTube. I will do this one as a third. I didn't get it out till Friday, and quite honestly, that's probably going to be how this goes. Somewhere during Wednesday and Friday, I'm going to get the YouTube episodes. We are now on TikTok. Yeah.
So she created this TikTok, and she calls me to go watch said TikTok.
And then this bitch falls asleep.
Listen. So, as I'm finishing the TikTok, my pizza was delivered and my PM meds kicked in, and I passed out before contacting
So I hear nothing, and I am high strung and neurotic and insecure as all hell. So I literally was so freaked out that she hated me for what I'd done. I cooked manicotti from scratch. It's not even a joke.
Where the hell is my manicotti, by the way? I wake up after sleeping for 13 hours I make manicotti. I need responses. And I'm like, I need manicotti.
No, you don't get manicotti.
What the hell?
Asshole.
I'm sick.
But we are, again, all on the usual places.
Oddlymedical.com. Oddlymedical@gmail.com. Come see our pictures. They are up on our website for you to see. Channeling my Jim Jones.
Jesus H.
You will be saved by coming to the website. Click on the pictures. Click on them here.
I am not motivated. I'm slightly frightened.
I think my cold meds are starting to wear off.
A little bit. I just think you're slab happy at this point.
That's also probably it. My nose is raw. It hurts.
So we're gonna go ahead and sign off before this devolves any further. Have a great week, our lovely oddlings.
I love oddlings. It makes me happy. Yeah, I need more cold meds.
And again, I'm Sarah.
I'm Chrissy.
Bye.
Bye.